Surrey, I think it was either Surrey or Burnaby not too long ago, where a group called, what are they called now?
It's like white people's rights or something.
It was a white supremacist rally that was being organized. They're called Blood and something. I mean, we laugh, but it's kind of not funny because they have a lot of members and it's kind of scary actually. Anyway. Oh yeah. So the corollary to that last question: is there a difference between anti-blasphemy laws and anti-hate laws? So that's sort of a corollary to the previous question. When we start talking about certain types of speech are not okay, is blasphemy covered by that? The UN is currently debating, or has been debating at least, bringing in specific bans on criticism of religion under the umbrella of blasphemy laws. Is criticism of religion hate speech? Do skeptics have a particular responsibility to advocate or oppose restrictions on speech? Is there something in the skeptic mindset that makes this a particular issue for us, or is this just something that's of general interest to everyone at the same level? And finally, is there a role that science can play in the discussion of whether or not hate speech laws should exist? Is there some way of using observation and control and experimentation to determine the value of hate speech laws? So that took way longer than 6 minutes, but anyway. Begin the mass debating. And I will moderate, and I'll throw the questions back up.
They're hard to see, Jory.
They are, and I apologize for that. But I didn't want to shove up for the 32-inch laptop. That shit's heavy.
Just for future things, can't you get that going with the...
I assumed that it's my bad. I assumed that we already had it, but...
I think we might have to pay for that.
Yeah.
In the past, it's been by accident when we had a projector.
Okay. Anyway, so the question I'm going to throw open generally to the floor at this point is, should hate speech laws exist in Canada? So for the 6 of you that said yes, does anyone want to defend that position?
Well, I've never really heard of an argument that convinces me that they shouldn't exist in some form. Although it is kind of like saying, prove that God doesn't exist, I suppose.
Well, odd arguments can go one way or the other. It's not you're trying to prove that hate speech, it's not proving the existence of something.
Yeah.
I think that hate speech laws are a bad thing because, which is actually my position, and if no one else wants to try to defend the anti-hate speech, I'll be happy to get up on my soapbox and yell at you for a little while. Matt?
Yeah, I'm definitely opposed to the hate speech laws in Canada, and there's several reasons that I have. The first one, I think, which is like the most practical, is just their application is far more detrimental, deleterious to legitimate speech. In practice, it's been far more harmful to legitimate speech than it has been in preventing what we would consider as hate speech, like racist, homophobic, sexist speech. It's most often used to silence political dissidents. In Canada, it's been used to silence political dissidents, minority groups whose opinions just aren't palatable, and it just generally stifles the conversation, the political conversation, so that we can't actually resolve issues that we have as Canadians. We can't actually speak freely about things so there's groups of people who are hateful, and we can't tell them why their hate is they can't express their hate in a way that's therapeutic, I guess you could say, for them and for us. I agree with Malcolm X's philosophy that he would rather have the racists be open about their racism so you can know where they are, where they stand, as opposed to using euphemistic dog whistle politics that they have in the United States, where they say things like, I'm just really not sure if Obama is an American. Didn't he say he was born in Kenya or something? Where they're not actually making a real, they're actually just saying, hey, I actually don't like this guy. I don't like the color of his skin. And so the racism is still there. It just becomes so over subtle and like so layered and hidden, and like we have to do this like dance to even like get at it, that it's just become bullshit, I think.
Well, I think, the idea about the hate laws, do they work, do they actually reduce intolerance or whatever, that's really hard to measure. And I don't think it's necessarily, a deal breaker, because that laws can also serve symbolic purposes in terms of what's socially acceptable and what kind of society we're striving for. And in terms of, I just think that, as a woman, and most hate speech, to me it seems, is kind of directed at minorities and women. And it's very easy for, say, a white straight male to defend speech at any cost. I think that a lot of hate speech, maybe, I'm sort of thinking of it as more, the bigger context than you perhaps, like discriminatory speech as well, but I think it is harmful to the community, and we talk about, we need to have it in the open so we can refute it, but the danger in that is it becomes more mainstream, as we see in the States, and it is in danger of becoming more acceptable. So, and it's often people are not there to refute it adequately, and it gains the upper hand. And I just think it sets a dangerous precedent to allow it. And I'm not saying that this particular hate speech law we have in Canada is the best thing, but I feel like we need to have something, I don't know.
We have in Canada a growing Islamic community. I would defend to the death their right to practice their religion, although I personally am an atheist. What I find deeply worrying is that even a sacred cow like Mohandas Gandhi in 1937 in a newspaper interview, he stated quite categorically that he saw no clear dividing line between politics and religion. They were just two aspects of the same thing. Now, we've had in recent history a religious bigot in Gainesville, Florida, who burned a Quran and streamed a video of it on the internet. And hey presto, over in Pakistan, some hot-headed mullahs with a Quran under their arm in a mosque got the congregation into such a religious fervor that they went out and beheaded some perfectly innocent people in a UN consulate. I think that that's dangerously close to yelling fire in a crowded theatre. I don't know that the law that protects freedom of religious expression should be allowed to condone that kind of hate-mongering.
Which one do you mean? Do you mean the book burning, or do you mean what the mullahs did?
Both.
Well, the book burning, that's somebody taking offense to the book burning in itself, and anyone subjectively could take offense to any type of speech, and that would automatically become hate speech, and that wouldn't be acceptable.
Well, the book burning was meant to cause offense. It's not like they took offense at something random that he said. But still, that doesn't necessarily.
I don't think
I want to break just to add something to the conversation here. The episode of South Park where they unmasked Muhammad, even though they had done it before, and they had showed Muhammad and no one said anything about it. And part of that has to do with the level of hysteria around depictions of Muhammad now as opposed to depictions of Muhammad 5 years ago when no one gave a shit. But that episode was not, at least in my mind and to the creators, was not intended to offend. But it did offend, and people were very upset. Now, if that episode had aired unedited and people had rioted in the streets, is that the kind of speech that you would say, well, that's clearly, it's going to cause people to protest, therefore you shouldn't be allowed to put it on the air? Or is it the intent? Does intent carry the weight of it? That they weren't trying to offend, and therefore it is unreasonable that people got offended. Because once we start talking about intent of speech and then its outcome, we're getting into some pretty dicey areas. Anyway, I just wanted to.
But that's everywhere where you try to judge intent. Even if you're judging, I don't know, someone dropping a concrete block from a highway bridge. Did he intend to hit a car, or did he?
But you were the one who brought up that Terry Jones was intending to offend Muslims, which is true.
Yes.
But also there was a legitimate component to his speech, was that he was afraid of the creeping tide of Islam, which I think is a bunch of crap or whatever. Yes?
Given that the law is loosely written, and that there are so many other laws which are actually binding against incitement to hate and violence or anything else that you would have. Although it's really nice and feel good to say that we really shouldn't say hateful things about anyone or anything else, so we should probably keep hate laws in Canada because it's, well, just so Canadian, isn't it? I would probably, although I'm somewhat offensive right now, I would probably fall on the side of saying that they're not necessary, and that they do get in the way of public discourse. They can be used by growingly federal tyrannical regimes to, silence whatever sense of dissent that they would want. I mean, if hate doesn't have any teeth, but we have so many other related laws which do have the teeth, then why have the hate laws at all?
I was just going to say, I have sort of a question and a commentary. When people quote Bible or Quranic verses that actually are an incitement to hate, like God kills fags. There you go. Not that it actually says that in the Bible, but the Fred Phelps type, you're actually quoting something that is actually an incitement to violence or genocide.
Yeah.
Now, does that fall under the freedom of religion, and are they allowed to quote that in the public sphere, and that's protected as freedom of religion? Because it just seems that the application is potentially really uneven, that you couldn't say in a secular, non-religious way that exact statement, but you could. So it just seems uneven if that is the case.
And if I had given this presentation with the door open and a gay student had walked by, they wouldn't know that I was quoting Fred Phelps, especially when I went on about how hilarious the word faggot Nazi was. It's not actually funny. Like, the two words on their own are incredibly hateful. The reason I get a laugh out of it is because it's just so ridiculous, the level of hatred. But we understand that in this room, that I'm not proposing that Fred Phelps's attitudes should be the law of the land. But we understand that the average person walking by doesn't. So again, if I'm quoting a piece of literature to point out its absurdity, but someone else walks by and doesn't know that I'm doing that, is that hate speech? Can I be brought before a human rights tribunal, or?
But there is a difference when you have a preacher from a pulpit saying that we are to act based on God's laws and not, there is a greater context to it.
To the best of my knowledge, and I can't imagine Gramps slipping up like this. He's a lawyer. In fact, many of the Phelpses are lawyers. As far as I know, he does not recommend any specific action be taken against anyone. He doesn't say, God hates fags, and therefore we should pass laws that lock them in cages.
No, I know, but that would be incitement to actual violence, but that's the difference between incitement to violence and hate speech is to actually say that God hates these people so much that he would kill them.
Yes.
We're not saying go kill them, but God would kill them, and we're God's people. So.
And strictly speaking, unless and I may be misinformed about this, but Hassan Ghazi didn't say, rise up, take your gun, and go shoot your Tutsi neighbor. He left it up to the imaginations of his followers to make that tiny cognitive leap. Or the same thing when Gladdenbach started talking about how George Soros was the puppet master behind everything. The reason that you don't have a job, even though you don't have a high school education, it's because of George Soros. And then someone gets in his car and goes and tries to murder George Soros because he heard it on Glenn Beck, and Glenn's like, I didn't think anyone was actually going to do it. Blah, blah, blah.